Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome back, everyone. Today, we're popping the hood for a really detailed, engineering-focused explainer on the Critica Splunk Nexus. We're going to see exactly how an AI autonomously defends a sovereign blockchain fleet. We're talking zero human operators, zero manual intervention, just raw telemetry, instant cryptographic accountability, and real-time defense. It is absolutely fascinating.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. We're covering the introduction to the Critica Splunk Nexus, ingestion and data flow, SPL queries and classification, security and immutable history, some really cool scenarios on attacks and failures, and finally, the future of governance. Don't worry, for the technical folks out there, we are absolutely covering everything from the raw telemetry ingestion all the way to live cryptographic accountability.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Introduction to the Critica Splunk Nexus.
So, at its core, the Critica Sovereign Fleet Observability Agent is what we call a closed-loop autonomous system. This is a super important definition to wrap our heads around. It bridges Splunk's heavy-duty operational intelligence with AI-driven remediation, specifically designed for the Radica Chain blockchain fleet. The absolute key phrase here is closed loop. You see, this AI doesn't just sit there monitoring dashboards and pinging a human when things go wrong. No, it detects the anomaly, autonomously classifies the root cause, actually executes the fix, like isolating a network, and then logs it, all on its own.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 2, Ingestion and Data Flow.
All right, check out the 6-step bottom-up data flow. Step 1 is ingest, where validators emit proof of karma consensus logs, and eBPF sensors grab those deep kernel-level network events. Step 2, we index that data straight into Splunk using the HTTP event collector. 3, the AI agent runs a query against Splunk via the MCP server. 4, the decision engine classifies what it's looking at. Step 5, it triggers an active remediation. And finally, Step 6, it creates an audit using a verifiable chain hash. You're literally watching raw proof of karma telemetry seamlessly transform into intelligent, autonomous action. It's like a giant puzzle coming together.
Now, to make that whole cycle actually work, the Splunk integration mechanics have to be absolutely flawless. Every single validator node runs a Splunk Universal Forwarder. It uses an HTTP Event Collector, or HEC, token, specifically called the Agent Audit Token, to route all that telemetry right to the Critica Audit Index. And honestly, here's the genius part of this security model. This token is strictly write-only. Paired up with strict role-based access control, or RBAC, it means that even if the agent itself gets compromised, there is no way it can delete or tweak the past audit entries. Pretty smart, right?
Moving right along to Section 3, SPL queries and classification. This is basically the brain of the operation.
So the crucial point is how the AI decision engine tells the difference between two totally different emergencies. On one hand, we've got resource contention. Think of cascading CPU or memory saturation just from an internal operational hiccup. On the other hand, we have a literal security threat, like an active, malicious external port scan. The SPL queries have to perfectly classify these anomalies. Why? Well, so the agent doesn't accidentally lock down a perfectly safe node that, just needed a little bit more memory.
Let's ground that abstract logic in some hard data. If we look at these specific container metrics, you can see the Karma Engine container starting at 32% CPU and just skyrocketing up to 96%. Meanwhile, memory jumps from 45% to 92%. So the AI queries Splunk, it sees this progressive resource exhaustion happening across multiple containers, like the mesh router and the log aggregator, and logically says, okay, this isn't a hack, this is just resource contention.
Up next is Section 4. Security and immutable history, because an autonomous system is only as trustworthy as its audit trail.
To solve the whole trust issue, the architecture uses this unbreakable chain motif. Literally every single decision the agent makes is recorded with complete cryptographic integrity using SHA-256 linked entries. Because every entry hashes the one right before it, any tiny modification immediately breaks the entire cryptographic chain. This kind of mathematical certainty is huge. It completely prevents an outside attacker or even some weird internal system error from secretly altering the history of what the AI actually decided to do.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that unbreakable chain is forged. We kick off with the previous hash, then we log the pre-execution intent. We follow that right up with the post-execution action, and finally seal the whole thing with the new hash. By mathematically fusing the AI's intent before it acted with the actual outcome after it acted, you get this provable, totally unforgeable audit trail of the entire sovereign fleet's operations. It's really elegant.
Let's shift gears to Section 5, Scenarios covering attacks and failures. We're going to see this in real-time practice now.
Okay, let's start with a classic operational failure, the Genesis degradation scenario. Look at Validator 7 here. Its metrics are just falling off a cliff. The latency drops from a nice healthy 45 milliseconds to a completely offline 1245 milliseconds. And right at the same time, its proof of karma score tanks from 0.95 down to an absolute 0.000. The node is obviously failing, and bam, the agent's remediation loop is instantly triggered.
Here is the timeline of how the agent resolves this whole mess without a human ever even touching a keyboard. At T plus 0 seconds, the system's totally healthy. At T plus 10, latency climbs past 500 milliseconds. By T plus 15, the decision engine queries the data and successfully flags this as resource contention. And just 5 seconds later, at T plus 20, the node is rebalanced using an autonomous Docker update command that gives the Karma engine more CPU. Boom, problem solved in 20 seconds flat.
But what happens when the network is actually under fire? In our second scenario, the eBPF sensors spot over 200 low TTL SYN packets. The telemetry paints a really clear picture here. We've got a persistent scan coming from the attacker IP 185.220.101.34. It's aggressively poking around multiple sensitive ports across the validator mesh, hitting port 8332 for RPC, port 22 for SSH, and port 3306 for MySQL.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer, mind-blowing speed of the mitigation. We are not talking seconds here. This is measured in milliseconds. At T plus 0, the port scan is detected. At T plus 50 milliseconds, it's correlated with a latency spike. By T plus 100 milliseconds, it's definitively classified as a security threat. And at T plus 150 milliseconds, literally in the blink of an eye, the agent executes an IP tables drop rule, instantly isolating the node and cutting off the attacker. That is fast.
Finally, let's slow things down a bit for Section 6, the future of governance. Let's look at the big picture.
When you really step back and look at the engineering of the Critica Splunk Nexus, it forces a massive paradigm shift. I mean, you are looking at a machine that closes its own loop, fixes its own infrastructure, and leaves behind an unbreakable mathematical audit trail of its exact logic. So I'm going to leave you with this thought to chew on. If an AI can autonomously defend a decentralized blockchain and cryptographically prove every single decision it makes, what massive human-run legacy systems will it be replacing next? Think about it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.